Hey there, and welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining us today because we are looking at a monumental structural shift happening right now in Philippine education. For decades, the traditional classroom model used assessments and tests for one primary purpose, and that was to sort students. Who passes, who fails, who gets the gold star. But we're seeing a massive evolution right now. We are transitioning from merely testing our students to truly equipping them for the real world.
Just think about this for a second. Is a test score really the whole story? I mean, when a student gets an 85 or a 72, what does that actually tell us? Instead of an assessment just being a hurdle to jump over, one that relies entirely on rote memory, modern frameworks are pushing us to look way past a single, isolated number to find out what a student can genuinely understand and do.
To understand exactly how we get there, we're going to explore four massive game changers today. First, accountability and fairness. Second, standards-based education, or SBE. Third, outcome-based education, or OBE. And finally, item response theory, or IRT. Okay, let's dive right into this.
Starting off with pillar number one, accountability and fair assessment.
Look, if we're going to evaluate a student's capability, we absolutely have an ethical responsibility to be fundamentally fair. Think back to the old view of accountability. It was pretty punitive, right? It was focused on pointing fingers and ranking schools. Well, modern assessment flips the script entirely. Today, it's all about continuous improvement. It's about taking that assessment data and using it as critical evidence to pinpoint a student's exact learning needs, and then using that to improve our own instruction to support them better. The entire goal is growth, not just ranking.
And that brings us to what fairness actually means in practice. According to the 2014 standards from the ARA, APA, and NCME, true fairness means every single learner gets an equal opportunity to demonstrate what they know. This means accessible testing conditions, appropriate accommodations, and a really crucial concept known as freedom from construct-irrelevant factors. Essentially, we have to strip away any cultural, linguistic, or socioeconomic bias that might be secretly tripping a student up.
Let's put this into perspective. Imagine a grade 5 math test on fractions, but the word problems use an unfamiliar foreign currency. If a student gets that wrong, did they fail because they don't understand fractions or because they just don't know the foreign money? That right there is a construct-irrelevant factor. By simply tweaking the item to use Philippine pesos, the cultural bias is completely removed. Suddenly, the test goes from flawed to perfectly fair because it's measuring exactly what it's supposed to measure, which is their math skills.
Okay, moving on to our second pillar, standards-based education, or SBE.
So how do we structurally organize exactly what we're measuring? Well, back in the day, the goal of a school year was kind of just getting to the end of the textbook. But standards-based education, championed by researchers like Robert Marzano in 2006, changes that completely. SBE tightly aligns the curriculum, the teaching, and the assessment to clearly defined learning standards. In the Philippines, these are the DepEd K-12 curriculum guides. So it's no longer about finishing Chapter 4. It's about ensuring the student has actually mastered the specific competency required for their grade level.
What does this look like in the classroom? Basically, every single quiz or task has to be an exact mirror of the required competency. Take grade 3 math. If the standard is adding and subtracting fractions, the assessment has to strictly measure just that. You can't suddenly throw in an algebra question just to be tricky. Or in grade 4 Filipino, if the standard is identifying cause and effect, sanhi and bunga, your reading assessment must focus precisely on cause and effect texts. The assessment has to be a direct, unbreakable reflection of the standard.
That leads us perfectly into our third pillar, outcome-based education, or OBE.
Now, while basic education leans heavily on SBE, things shift a bit as students move forward. In the Philippines, the Commission on Higher Education fully institutionalized OBE back in 2012 via Memo Order 46. What sets it apart? Well, William Spotty, who's basically the father of OBE, defined it in 1994 as organizing education around the achievement of clearly defined outcomes. So instead of focusing on what the teacher teaches, the spotlight shifts entirely to what the student can actually demonstrate after the instruction is over. It demands authentic assessment. Can you take what was on the whiteboard and actually do it in real life?
The crucial thing here is how we measure that demonstration. You can't just hand out a multiple-choice test on democracy, right? For example, to explain democratic participation in grade 5 Arling Panlipunan, students might actually conduct a mock barangay election. Or to demonstrate they can solve percentage problems in grade 5 math, they compute actual discounts in a simulated grocery activity. OBE brings these abstract concepts out of the textbook and turns them into vibrant, student-centered performance tasks.
All right, let's zoom all the way in for our fourth and final pillar, item response theory, or IRT. So we've talked about standards and authentic tasks, but what about the actual mathematical nuts and bolts of a single written test question? For a long time, we used classical test theory, which kind of assumes every single item on a test contributes equally to a score. But in 1991, Hambleton, Swaminathan, and Rogers popularized item response theory. IRT makes a really vital realization. Not all test items are created equal. IRT is a highly precise measurement model. It estimates a student's true underlying ability, which is represented by the mathematical symbol theta, based on their responses to very specific individual items.
Here's the really cool part about IRT. It doesn't just look at a student's final score. It simultaneously estimates both the student's true ability and the unique characteristics of the individual test questions. This provides incredibly precise measurements across all different ability levels, which allows for much fairer comparisons. In fact, this mathematical modeling is the absolute foundation for computerized adaptive testing, where a test gets harder or easier in real time based on exactly how you answer.
To really grasp how IRT works, you need to know that it evaluates 3 core parameters for every single question. First up is difficulty, or B. Is it a simple 2 plus 3 or a complex algebraic equation? Second is discrimination, or A, which measures how well the question separates your top students from the struggling ones. And third is guessing, or C, because in a 4-option multiple-choice test, there's always a 25% chance a student just gets lucky, right? IRT's mathematical models actually account for that guessing probability.
Let's zoom in on that second parameter for a second, discrimination. Because a truly good test question isn't just hard. A good item has high discrimination. That means the high-performing students are getting it right and the low-performing students are missing it. It clearly separates who actually grasps the competency from who needs a bit more help. If an item has low discrimination, meaning top students and struggling students are getting it right or wrong at the exact same rate, it's just a poor question, and it isn't giving educators the reliable data they need to help those students.
And that brings us to our final parting thought. From making sure our questions are culturally fair and precisely calibrated with IRT, to ensuring they mirror exact standards and demand authentic, real-world demonstrations, the whole landscape of education is totally transforming. So look at your own practices, your own environments. Are your assessments truly measuring learning, or are they just measuring memory? I really hope this explainer has sparked your curiosity to go out there and truly equip the next generation. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.